hello, and welcome to Nursing News You Can Use at 5. I am Tina Baxter, your host, and I want to thank you for tuning in today. And for those of you that are on our Baxter Professional Services page, you might have been wondering what happened last week. Well, we had a special event, and so we did a live stream to LinkedIn for the first time to give that a try with that audience. But we're back here with you on our BPS page as well as on our Nurse Shark Academy page. And hello to those of you that are on YouTube and welcome to the show. So we like to start off our show with our affirmation for today. So I want to start with our affirmation here. It says, nobody gets to the top of the mountain without falling on their face over and over again. I'm going to say that again. Nobody gets to the top of the mountain without falling on their face over and over again. And I can tell you, I've had a couple of falls myself and seem to tumble off the top of that mountain. But you know what? It's to get back up again. And what's your giddy up like? That's my question to you. So leave a like or a post in a comment and let me know what your giddy up is like when you have to get up after you fall. How do you get back up again? So let's go ahead and get into the news because we do have a lot to cover, and then I have some announcements to make. Okay. All right. So here's our first news story, and it just came over the press today, and I happened to see it, and it's another one of those things that's very infuriating whenever you hear about it. So it says this is from the Bellingham Herald that I happen to pick this up. It says patient's death leads to a discovery home health care nurse was fake, Florida cops say. Let's get into this one. The death of a patient receiving in home health care led his family to discover the nurse was a fraud with an entirely forged work history, according to investigators in Florida. Julian Williams now faces 14 counts of practicing medicine without a license, the Clay County Sheriff's Office said in a video posted March 18th to Facebook. The patient died of natural causes on October 13th, about 1 month after Williams was hired as a live-in nurse, Clay County Sheriff Michelle Cook said. Our detectives launched a fraud investigation when family members became suspicious of Williams' qualifications and the fact that Williams left the company shortly after the death of the loved one. The patient was identified as retired U.S. Marine Gunnery Sergeant Kensworth Moody of Fleming Island by WLTV. He was 69 years old, battling kidney disease, as obituary reports. An investigation into Williams' background revealed that his credentials were falsified by his fiancee, Alexia Irwin, who worked in the office of the Jacksonville-based Bright Star Care, Cook said. So here's the issue. So this individual was impersonating a nurse, and his girlfriend, fiance, decided to fake his credentials so that he can work there, and she was at a position to do so. Allegedly, according to this article. And that just makes it different. Again, we're seeing more and more of this of nurses getting their credentials stolen, identity theft fraud, and then people just perpetrating being a nurse. Everybody wants to be us, but not do the work to get to be us. Here we go. So Irwin started with the company in September and got Williams hired as a nurse after transferring a former employee's work history onto Williams' applications, officials said. Julian Williams was not trained as a home health aide, nor was he trained as a nurse. He was not licensed as a nurse. So and he didn't know how to take care of anybody. This is really scary. And this makes me question, did the facility do their background checks as they should and check their employment history and educational history, etc.? It says Williams, using these fake credentials, was eventually paired with a local Clay County family and oversaw the care of the elderly man in our community. This man required 24-hour care and skilled nursing assistance. Williams would work out of the family home with the impression of legitimate skilled nursing care. Williams and Irwin left Bright Star after the patient died and were found March 17th in Michigan by U.S. Marshals. So they just fled the state. So they knew they were doing something that was not right. They are charged with 14 counts of practicing medicine without a license, 1 count of criminal use of personal identification information, and 1 count of schemes to defraud. An investigation found no evidence that Williams caused Moody's death, she said. As of March 18th, the 2 suspects are awaiting extradition back to Clay County. So, again, it's just heartbreaking when you hear stories like this. All right, so getting into more information. This is from nurse.org about the same situation. And I wanted to see if there's anything new that was come out of this. And so it says a Michigan couple has been arrested after investigations say they ran an elaborate scheme allowing an unlicensed man to pose as nurse caring for an elderly patient who later died. Um, it said, of course, he had no formal training. I just want to see if there's anything new. The fraud investigation, which spanned several months, resulted in arrests, warrants for both Williams and Irwin. The couple was located in Michigan and arrested on 14 counts of practicing medicine without a license, as well as charges of identity theft and fraud. Despite the serious charges, Sheriff Cook clarified that there's no evidence that suggests the patient's death was caused by Williams' lack of training. Therefore, the couple is not facing manslaughter or homicide charges as of right now. Now in custody, Williams and Irwin are awaiting extradition back to Florida where they were answered for their alleged crimes. And so again, here's the question I had, which is posed in nurse.org. How did this happen? And so as investigators said, Irwin, who worked at Bright Star Care and scheduling human resources and patient records, used her position to manipulate the hiring process and slip Williams into the system. Because of the fraudulent paperwork, Williams bypassed standard credential verification and was assigned to direct patient care, a responsibility that requires extensive training and state licensing. The home care agency paid him at a higher rate, believing he was a licensed nurse. So there's a lot of things because she's over HR. That's why I kind of wondered. I said, how did this happen? She was in human resources, so she was able to fudge some things. The case has raised concerns about hiring safeguards in home health agencies and the importance of verifying medical credentials. Authorities stress that families should always check a caregiver's licensing status through official state nursing boards before allowing them into their home. And so that was another question of, they're putting that onus on the family, right? And then as a business owner, you would want to trust your staff as doing their due diligence and checking things. What happens when the person who's responsible for that is the one padding things? So there's a lot that probably is that's going to come out of this case. I'm just going to be curious to follow it and see what happens. But that makes me also wonder about other home care agencies because it seems like everybody is, it seems like a lot of people, I should say. I was going to say everybody and their mama, but a lot of people are opening up home care agencies. They're popping up, right? I want to do a home care agency because people are looking for the quick buck. A lot of people, now I'm not saying all, because a lot of them are very altruistic. They love what they do. They love working with the patients. But some, particularly those that aren't in the medical profession, are just looking to make a quick buck. And I think that sort of leaves you open then to some of these things happening because you aren't there actually caring for the patient and know what the red flags are and what to look for. And I'm like, and to put that onus on the family, make sure you check the state board of nursing website and make sure that they're actually a nurse, that could be a problem. And so there has to be some checks and balances there. I don't know what the solution is, but if you have a solution, let me know in the comments. Okay. All right. Here's a topic that we've been talking about on the show more than once. This is from the Associated Press News. And it's talking about nurses pushing back against AI, which I think we should. Okay. So it says there's a number of new companies offering ways to automate time-consuming tasks usually performed by nurses or medical assistants. It is the most visible sign of AI's inroads in healthcare, where hundreds of hospitals are using increasingly sophisticated computer programs to monitor patients' vital signs, flag emergency situations, and trigger step-by-step action plans for care, jobs that were all previously handled by nurses and other health professionals. And I have to say, as a health professional, I do use AI in my clinical practice. It's built into our electronic medical record system. But when you do, you have to go over that and check it because there can be mistakes and they can take things out of context. And so you want to make sure that if you're using it safely. And then what are the safeguards for this? How can it be used? And relying too much on technology to tell you something may also open you up to liability if something goes wrong. So there's a lot of questions about AI, the use of AI. Now, obviously, I grew up on watching shows like Star Trek. and where they can go in and they'll talk to the computer. The computer talks back and tells them all the things, and it monitors your vital signs. It tells you when something's happening. But again, what they continue to have in those shows is that human element, and show that human element has to be there. So I know a lot of nurses are concerned about this. This is something we need to talk about. I do know some states are actually going in and writing laws that says that AI programs cannot be legally classified as nurses, and they cannot be called nurses. So I think that's important that we do protect our profession. So more in the story, it says hospitals say AI is helping their nurses work more efficiently while addressing burnout and understaffing, but nursing unions argue that this poorly understood technology is overriding nurses' expertise and degrading the quality of care patients receive. Hospitals have been waiting for the moment when they have something that appears to have enough legitimacy to replace nurses, said Michelle Mohan of National Nurses United. The entire ecosystem is designed to automate, de-skill, and ultimately replace caregivers. Mohan's group, the largest nursing union in the U.S., has helped organize more than 20 demonstrations at hospitals across the country, pushing for the right to have a say in how AI can be used and protection from discipline if nurses decide to disregard automated advice. Because again, the algorithm may say that this is the right thing to do, but given the information at the time, the nurse's judgment may say that may not be the correct thing to do. So that raises alarms. And when the ANA is already making questionable changes to their code of ethics, to where instead of saying a lot of things are a must and should, now it's, you know, maybe should think about, it's kind of what they're saying, ought. So there's a lot of wording issues that could be very problematic. And one of those things that I worry about is there a mandate from AI to say you should take this action, but the nurse goes contrary to that action and something bad happens? Are they going to blame it on the nurse? So I'm going to ask you, would you say, if this was a physician and they had to take care of a patient and AI told the physician, well, you're supposed to cut here, but you decided to cut there because you're actually looking at the patient, would that cause a problem? And so this is where we need to think about these things and raise questions about the rise of AI in healthcare. Other problems, it says the group raised new alarms in January when Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the incoming health secretary, suggested AI nurses are as good as any doctor. And so again, this is where the problem comes. It could help deliver care in rural areas. So you're going to tell me you're going to send a robot, and the robot's going to be able to go in there and take care of your elderly grandma, get her on and off the toilet, make sure she gets fed appropriately. I think that's disingenuous, sir. And I'm wondering what medical school you went to that you can make that decision. Anyway, on Friday, Dr. Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, who's been nominated to oversee Medicare and Medicaid, says he believes AI can, quote, liberate doctors and nurses from all the paperwork. And as I said, I have adopted some use of it in my clinical practice. It was offered to us as a trial basis. I can see where it can be useful, but it can also cause me to slow down a little bit because I have to recheck what it's doing. So please take a look at this article. There's more to this article in the Associated Press, but let me know what you think, nurses, about the possibility of AI coming to your hospital or your clinic today. All right, here's an article that is from the Indy Star, and it's right here at home. And it says residents suffer as county hospitals divert $2.6 billion from poorly staffed nursing homes. This just came out on March 18th. So this is a continuation, I think, of some of the things that they've done in the past. So it says county-owned hospitals in Indiana have diverted away more than $2.5 billion in Medicaid money intended to provide care at nursing homes, leaving sick and elderly residents to languish in some of the most poorly staffed facilities in America, according to a new financial data obtained by Indy Star. The data acquired in part through a public records lawsuit reveals that the fullest picture of yet of a secretive financing scheme that Indiana relies on to prop up its public hospitals, but that critics says enriches healthcare providers at the expense of vulnerable nursing home patients. The new information shows 21 public hospitals kept about 46% of the 5.6 billion in supplemental Medicaid payments generated by roughly 500 nursing homes they acquired over the past 15 years. At the same time, Indiana nursing homes continue to rank near the very bottom of the nation for staffing. The diverted money was the subject of a 2020 Indy Star investigation that showed how poor state and federal oversight enabled Indiana county hospitals to essentially game a Medicaid system that is supposed to benefit nursing home residents. And so, if you haven't had a chance to go back and read that article. We covered that article back in 2020, which is why I said this is a further investigation of what they've previously reported on. And so we covered that back in 2020. And so that's coming back again. It says reporters found that county hospitals had acquired nearly all of Indiana nursing homes, at least on paper, to have access to enhanced Medicaid payments reserved for nursing homes owned by local government entities. Under state and federal Medicaid rules, nursing homes owned by local government entities includes public hospitals can claim a significantly higher reimbursement rate than privately owned facilities. Indiana Medicaid pays nursing homes an average base rate of $297.42 a day for each patient. County-owned homes qualify for another $108.30, or about 36% more. Much of that money, however, never reaches the nursing homes. In 2020, reporters identified roughly $1 billion in supplemental payments that county hospitals have diverted away from the nursing homes since the early 2000s. The figure was based on information Indy Star obtained through public records requests, but it was incomplete because 8 hospitals, mostly from suburban counties or surrounding Indianapolis, refused to provide the data, claiming it represented a trade secret. Together, the 8 hospitals, Hancock Regional Hospital, Hendricks Regional Health, Henry Community Health, Johnson Memorial Health, Majors Health Partners, Rush Memorial Hospital, Witham Health Services, and Riverview Health control about half of the state's nursing homes. In response, Indy Star filed a public records lawsuit against the hospitals in an effort to force them to disclose how much public money they diverted from the nursing homes. After nearly 2 years, the lawsuit resulted in a settlement agreement in which the hospitals admitted no wrongdoing, but agreed to provide 5 years of data from 2018 to 2023. The data shows that the nursing homes owned by the 8 hospitals generated roughly $2 billion in supplemental Medicaid payments, but only about 2/3 of that amount went to the nursing homes. The other 1/3, about $649 million, was made available to the hospitals instead, bringing the total amount of nursing home money retained by county hospitals across the state to nearly $2.6 billion. Even that figure is an undercount since the 8 hospitals in the lawsuit only provided data for 5 years. Some of them owned nursing homes and received the enhanced Medicaid payments for twice as long. The hospitals have spent the diverted money on new buildings, renovations, equipment, ambulances, and new technology. In Indianapolis, for example, the Health and Hospital Corporation of Marion County used money from more than 70 nursing homes it acquired to help build the $750 million Sidney and Lois Eskenazi Hospital. So this is from Daniel Hatcher, a law professor at the University of Baltimore, who has written critically of Indiana's nursing home system. And he says, I think this data is both striking and deeply concerning. It shows a diversion of Medicaid funds from their intended purpose. This is a state that desperately needs the Medicaid funds to go directly to the care of individuals, and the state needs to stop the diversionary tactics. So this is not surprising, but here it is. A spokesperson for the hospitals declined to comment for the story, but hospital executives have long argued that the program is legal. Neither the federal government nor state Medicaid officials have ever said otherwise. The program, however, was never meant to be a major funding source for public hospitals. It was intended to provide an extra funding boost for government-owned nursing homes, which traditionally serve the sickest and poorest patients. But in an effort to draw more federal funds to the state, Indiana lawmakers allowed the hospitals to acquire nursing homes, including those outside their home counties. The unique ownership structure has allowed Indiana to collect more supplemental nursing home money than any other state. And it's noted that Indiana continues to rank 50th for staffing in their nursing homes. Despite the flood of federal funds, Indiana nursing home residents have continued to suffer in dismally staffed facilities, sometimes hundreds of miles away from the public hospitals that own them. An Indy Star analysis of federal data shows that Indiana nursing homes, on average, rank 50th among the 50 states and Washington, D.C., for a total nursing home staffing hours per resident after adjusting for how sick residents are. That's a down spot from 2020. Only Illinois ranks lower. Experts say that that's concerning because staffing is widely recognized as the best indicator of nursing home quality. Without adequate staff, basic standards of care, such as assisting residents to avoid falls or turning immobile patients to prevent bed sores, are often neglected. In Indiana, families of nursing home residents have claimed in lawsuits and interviews that their loved ones suffered from amputated body parts, deadly falls, and lethal attacks by other residents that could have been prevented with appropriate staffing. The diverted money represents, quote, a gross failure of priorities and a betrayal of nursing home patients and their families, said Jeff Powless, a malpractice attorney who represents Indiana nursing home residents and their families. It's like having a bucket of water and choosing to water a flower while your hair is on fire, he said. Shiny new hospitals should not be secretly financed with understaffed nursing homes and patient neglect. County hospital executives have dismissed such criticism in the past. They argue it's unfair to call the hospital's share of the money a diversion, noting that without the participation of county hospitals, the extra Medicaid money wouldn't be available at all. Instead, they described the program as a win-win for nursing homes and hospitals. The money has helped public hospitals in Indiana stay open despite a spat of closures across the nation, they say, while also allowing nursing homes to update equipment and improve staffing and retention. At least one study, however, has cast doubt on that claim. And so this is a really big issue that's been going on. There's been a lot of research and study into this. It's kind of interesting. There's been a research study here that says from the University of Iowa that analyzed cost reports for Indiana nursing homes from 2009 and 2017 in an effort to gauge the impact of the supplemental Medicaid payments. They found that even when the supplemental Medicaid money does make it to nursing homes, most of it's spent on building, equipment, and administrative expenses, not direct patient care, which is one of the things that the new nursing home regulations put forth by the Biden administration was going to address. However, given the new regime that has come in with the Trump administration, that is now currently on hold. And it looks like maybe on hold for a very long time, given what's going on in the government and the lack of progress they're making in a lot of things. So let's get on. So it says, in fact, spending on clinical expenses, including nursing salaries, actually decreased, the study found. They said this is not surprising since Indiana's supplemental payment program did not directly link payments to clinical services. Perhaps policymakers should consider linking supplemental payments to specific investments related to clinical care, which would make sense. You know, if you're going to get the money, designate how it's going to be used. The study concluded our findings raised questions on the transparency of the financing arrangements between county hospitals and nursing homes and the need to link supplemental payments to clinical expenses. So take a look at this article. There's more information by the Indy Star, and I think they did a great job on this article. And let's keep an eye on what's happening in Indiana because it's very important that we take care of it and take care of things. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll have our next story. Feel the sun at the Nurse Academy 5-day Nurse Entrepreneurship Challenge. Are you a nurse dreaming of something more? A career where you call the shots, follow your passion, and make a bigger impact? With our 5-day Nurse Entrepreneurship Challenge, you can transform your skills into a thriving business. Learn how to find your niche, Build a business plan, market your brand, and scale your business all in just 1 hour a day. It's time to take control of your future. Start your entrepreneurial journey today. You already care for others. Now it's time to care for your dreams. I did it, and so can you. Your future awaits. Don't let another day go by wondering what if. Take that first step toward the life and career you deserve. Come feel the sun and sign up at the NurseSharkAcademy.biz today. All right. And so, yes, we will have just a quick update announcement to that. We will be having our 5-day challenge coming up. So I just wanted to get it on your radar. I'll be posting that on the sharkacademy.biz when that challenge will be. So just start looking forward to that. So let's go ahead and get into our next story. Okay. And this is coming from McKnight's Long-Term Care News. And it says new consumer law would lump nursing homes with unscrupulous car salesmen attempt to block collections. Okay. Blasting what she calls predatory billing practices, New York's Attorney General is proposing a new state law that would subject some nursing homes to civil enforcement. The Fostering Affordability and Integrity Through Reasonable Business Practices Act, or FAIR, would update the state's 55-year-old consumer protection law to include nursing home provision and also address artificial intelligence-based schemes, phishing scams, hard-to-cancel subscriptions, junk fees, and other unfair, deceptive, and abusive practices. It would specifically target nursing homes that routinely sue relatives of deceased residents for their unpaid bills despite not having any basis for liability. The state bill comes just 6 weeks after the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services limited nursing homes' ability to collect from third parties, a change that attorneys warned could require more facilities to sue relatives and estates for unpaid skilled nursing stays. Nursing homes are increasingly limited in writing off bad debt as more patients move to Medicare Advantage plans for which no financial recourse is available. The latest proposal, which allows for penalties and restitution through civil suits led by the AG's office, is backed by a broad base of consumer and patient advocates. All too often, we see seniors and their families fall victim to predatory business practices such as unfair debt collection by nursing homes, home repair scams, and financial exploitation, said Carol Nicholson, CEO and Executive Director of the Center for Elder Law and Justice. Our attorneys work tirelessly to help secure redress for our clients, but New York's weak general consumer protection law, which notably does not ban unfair or abusive business activity, limits our ability to secure restitution. The legislation championed by New York Attorney General Letitia James is expected to be introduced by Senator Leroy Comrie, Democrat, and also has initial support from Assembly member Micah Lasher, Democrat. It would seek to put nursing homes in the same category as predatory car dealers, debt collectors that illegally seize Social Security benefits, and health insurance companies that tout long lists of in-network doctors who don't actually accept the insurance. Yes, can I just stop there? Yes, because I've seen that happen. There have been a lot of times when you go and I've had patients tell me, I've been trying to find a provider for this. I need a specialist for that. I need a primary care doctor. I call my insurance company. They say this person's in network, but that person's not accepting patients or they don't take the insurance. Yes, make them keep their stuff up to date. Okay, anyway, let's get on with that. So James said updating state-level consumer protections was essential as the federal government moves to shut down agencies doing similar work. She specifically noted an executive order that required the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to stop its work and decline new cases. The CFPB has played an increasing role in nursing home debt collection efforts in the last several years. Late last year, it forbade credit reporting bureaus from including medical debt and credit scores, making collection efforts more difficult for healthcare providers. With the February executive order, it's unclear whether the rule will be allowed to go into effect. Some states, however, already prevent healthcare providers from reporting medical debt information to consumer reporting agencies. New York is among those, but many of its consumer laws have antiquated and inadequate. The Fair Business Practices Act will close loopholes that make it too easy for New Yorkers to be scammed and will allow my office to go after anyone who violates the law, James said in a statement late last week. I look forward to working with my partners in state government to ensure that as Washington retreats from protecting consumers, New York steps up to lead. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. What are your thoughts on that? Because I happen to agree with that. That has been my concern as well. Um, and them trying to put people, you know, go after people for the care that family members received, and that's not fair. That's not fair. Okay. And so, yeah, this is just a trigger warning here. This again talks about a nurse being attacked, but I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. And I don't know. Again, it's Florida, so that's all I have to say. It's Florida. It's from ABC News. I don't know what's going on in Florida, but yeah. So it says nurse attacks sparked demonstration outside HCA hospital in Charlotte County. An unruly patient is accused of violently attacking two nurses at HCA Hospital in Port Charlotte on Tuesday. Nearly 24 nurses demonstrated outside the hospital, calling for more safety measures to protect them. These attacks come a month after an HCA nurse in Palm Beach had every bone in her face broken by a violent patient. And can I just stop here because I'm going to just say this. So there was a post on LinkedIn by one of my fellow nursing colleagues that was outraged at the fact that there was a 13-year-old patient that attacked a nurse, allegedly pulled her hair, and I think it was pulled her hair and tried to bite her or bit the nurse. And now this 13-year-old patient has been charged with a felony. And my response, because there wasn't a lot of information, this was another story that came out of nurse.org. There wasn't a lot of information about context and how what happened. But my first thought was, well, yeah, they're press charges. They should. And so this particular nurse was like, well, I have a 13-year-old child and my 13-year-old, makes dumb decisions. And I all agree with all that. 13-year-olds can make dumb decisions. But my point was, well, this person is 13, not 6, and they know better than to bite people, or they should, unless they've got some developmental problem or something like that. And so she's like, but he's just a child, or she's just a child. And I'm just like, but there are 13-year-olds that unalive their classmates, that attack their teachers. What if they chose to randomly attack someone on the street? Would they not then be charged? So what makes it different that it's a nurse in the hospital? And I think we really need to stop using nurses and other healthcare providers as fodder. I'm sorry. I did not sign up to be assaulted at work. And let me be clear, I will prosecute to the best of my ability. So I think we've got to stop doing that. And so, yeah, this person's 13 years old and yeah, they're charged with a felony, but you know what? Maybe that stops that 13-year-old from later on doing harm and actually unaliving someone later. And so as I explained, I said, you know what? We don't know all the details of the case because it was very unclear. But I have to say, if the prosecutor chose to take this to a felony, there had to be probable cause for that. And so we don't know all the details because it's a juvenile, but more than likely, I said the juvenile will probably take a plea deal. They'll probably plead it down to a misdemeanor if they can. They'll probably go to juvenile. Yeah, but they did something wrong. There's consequences. And so we have got to stop allowing others to gaslight us and say things like, well, you know, people in healthcare, they're upset and we're there to be comforting to them. Yeah, we're there to comfort, but I'm also not your punching bag. And so I have a big problem with that. And so kudos to these nurses that are striking or are protesting. But let me get back to the story. So this one hits home for me because I've been assaulted at work. and had the, oh, well, what could you have done better? Or maybe we could do something differently. Or, oh, well, it probably won't go anywhere, so don't even bother to prosecute. I'm like, absolutely not. I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm going on the record. Yes, I will prosecute. I've been assaulted too many times at work because of unsafe practices, sending me to patients that they know have problems, and they send me out there by myself. And when I was in home care, when I worked in the psychiatric unit, absolutely not. No, ma'am, no, sir. So, anyway, let's get back to the story. So, nurses in Charlotte County chanted it shouldn't hurt to be a nurse as they call for changes and increased workplace safety measures after two nurses say they were violently attacked last Tuesday on the job. HCA registered nurse Valerie Jean works at Fawcett and said she doesn't believe she is safe. Jean read a prepared statement from one of her colleagues that was attacked, saying that the nurse is not ready to speak publicly because she is traumatized after an intensive care unit patient became unruly and attacked her. I was told that this patient had been yelling, biting, kicking, and spitting. She went on to explain that things escalated before the patient injured two nurses. Before I could stop him, he had one of the nurses that came to help in a headlock and was choking her. The nurses blamed HCA's low staffing levels and lack of training for the attacks. The nurses shouted outside of the hospital that they want safe staffing and they want it now. Registered nurse Jeanette Brooke says she had been attacked twice in the hospital, and the first time she said the patient used a pole. She said attacks on nurses are becoming all too common. The patient not only stabbed me but kicked me in the legs. Last month, a HCA nurse in Palm Beach was brutally beaten beyond recognition. The patient broke every bone in her face. However, nurses seldom report the violence, and Brooks said a nurse's intention is not to have the patient criminalized, but rather to prevent it from happening. We're here to take care of the patients, but we're here to ask who's going to take care of us. So again, listen. I am all for preventing these things from happening. I think prevention is key. But I'm going to tell you right now, sometimes, and I'm not talking about the patient that's delirious, and I'm not talking about the dementia Alzheimer's patient, and I'm not talking about the patient that's in a psychotic break. I'm talking about the ones that think that they can be intimidating just because they can, and yeah. There are times when, yes, that behavior is criminal and needs to be called out as such. And so I do not agree with that. It may be controversial for some, but I'm telling you right now, I know that and this is what I said, I've worked with adolescents, and I know there are just some kids out there that will do things because they think they can get away with them. And they'll do things because they don't think of the consequences. But they have to be held accountable, because otherwise they become adults who think they can get away with anything. And we see escalation of violence in other places. So I wholeheartedly agree we have to do something on the prevention side, and anything we can do for its deterrence, maybe bring the temperature down. If they knew that this patient was already biting, kicking, and all this other stuff, why didn't they go in there in force to take care of that patient? There's a lot of questions to this. And if you're understaffed, who are you going to get to help you? And a lot of times they'll staff security in the hospital, but guess what? That may be two people. What if there's multiple things that they have to respond to? What are you going to do? So Fawcett said in a statement they have a zero tolerance for violence in the workplace. Yeah, okay. The release went on to say, as a result of the attack last week, they're now reassessing their safety policy. Yeah, okay. And again, that's what they say. And I have to say there has to be better solutions. And maybe that's why I say holding people accountable for their behavior. Because if you continue to put a Band-Aid on it and say, well, they were upset. Okay? Well, you can be upset, but that does not mean that you put your hands on people. That's not what that means. Okay. So this brings up to another case as a follow-up. This is coming from Chicago News. It says body camera video shows officer shooting chainsaw wielding man in nursing home in St. Charles, Illinois. CBS Chicago. Police officers who shot and killed a man who was wielding a chainsaw inside a senior assisted living center in St. Charles, Illinois in December will not face any criminal charges. Daniel H. Escalera of Stockwell, Indiana, was shot and killed unalive by police at the River Glen of St. Charles Assisted Living Facility on December 1st of 2024. Kane County State Attorney Jamie Mosser's office reviewed an Illinois State Police investigation of the shooting and announced Tuesday that it was justified and none of the officers involved will face any criminal charges. Body camera footage released by the office showed that the officers confronting Escalera inside the lobby and cafeteria of the building. The first officer who arrived at the scene pointed a taser at him as he was trying to start the chainsaw and repeatedly telling him to drop it. Escalera apparently was trying to find his wife and could be heard saying, "Where is she?" "I just want my wife, man," Escalera said, repeatedly pulling on the chainsaw's cord. After successfully starting the chainsaw, an officer fired a taser into his chest, knocking him to the ground in the facility's cafeteria, just feet away from two people sitting at a table. Okay, why are these people sitting at the table? If somebody is wielding a chainsaw, now maybe they were, had dementia, didn't know what was going on. But I'm like, you should clear that scene. Why are people sitting there at the table watching a dude with a chainsaw with the cops out there? I'm like, that's crazy. But anyway, Escalera then quickly got back on his feet and lunged toward the officer who backed up into the lobby. As more officers arrived inside the facility, Escalera moved into the lobby and raised the chainsaw over his head before charging at one of the officers. The officers fired 2 shots, which missed Escalera, and who then collided with the officer, struck him with the chainsaw, and dropped the chainsaw. Monster's office said that the officer then shot Escalera in the arm after he dropped the chainsaw. Escalera continued running into a nearby hallway, and one of the officers shot him in the chest while he was standing just inches away from a person in a wheelchair. And I'm like, if you got a crazy man with a chainsaw running around in your facility, why does staff have people in the hallway? They should have been locking doors, shutting the fire door. I'm like, what's going on? This is crazy. So this story was crazy to me. Anyway, so I'm like, all this going on. They got tasers and shooting and people just out there in the hallway. So I didn't see the video, but this sounds crazy to me. So in the video, Escalera falls to the ground after being shot, and officers can then be seen handcuffing him and providing first aid while calling for paramedics. He was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced unalive. So the autopsy determined he died of multiple wounds. He was diagnosed with methamphetamine intoxication. Toxicology reports show he had several drugs in his system. Also, based on the video and other evidence, prosecutors found no wrongdoing on the part of the officers. They said, "I want to thank St. Charles police officers for acting to de-escalate the situation before being forced to resort to the use of deadly force." And so, again, he had no ties in the area or the senior living center, had no previous encounters with the St. Charles police. So we don't even know why he was there, other than the man obviously was probably mentally ill. But again, my question is, if you have someone in your hallway doing all of that, why is it people just sitting there at the dinner table? You didn't get your patients out the way. I'm like, what is going on? So that was just a wild story for me. That was wild. And I'm reacting in real time with you on this one because I'm like, wait a minute. Y'all done had people just sitting at the dinner table. Like, we gonna let Miss May sit there and Mr. Fred sit there and watch all this going on. I'm like, no. I would have cleared that area and got my residents somewhere safe. They would have been put in their rooms. Nobody go out your room while this is going on. That's exactly what should have happened. But I don't know. So the safety factors at this facility really concern me. Really concerns me from the way this article is written. Concerns me. So like I said, I'm reacting in real time with you, but that was crazy. All right, that was a wild ride. So let's go ahead and get to this last article for today. And this is our nurse making a difference. If I can find the story. And where'd it go? Well, it was up here. Huh. Well, I'm not sure where that story went, but all right then. Well, we'll just forgo that and we'll end our news segment right now. And let's talk about some events that are coming up. Very excited about some of these events that we have coming. So, make sure I get this right. So, next week, we have on the 26th our um, podcast power event. That will be at 11 o'clock. So if you are wanting to get as a nurse business owner, or anybody that's interested, and you want to learn how to be a better podcast guest and how to get on a podcast, that event will be on next Wednesday at 11. You can sign up at the nurseSharkAcademy.biz for our podcast power, how to get booked and be outstanding podcast guest. You can certainly sign up for that. That'll be on the 26th. That's next Wednesday. We also have coming up pretty soon, it'll be the new month. Wow. And so every month we have our TB classes, our CPR classes with Baxter Professional Services Health Education. But also on April the 2nd, we have our TB instructor course. So, nurses out there and healthcare providers, if you want to become a TB instructor and be able to teach the TB basic validation course, and you have your current basic TB validation for the past 6 months right here in Indiana, you are available. You can come and join this class and sign up for this class at Baxter Professional Services Health Education.com. And let's see. And then those of you that don't know or who are legal nurse consultants, if you're listening to this, the Inside Litigation event is coming up on Thursday, April the 3rd and 4th in Indianapolis. I am going to be there. Yes, I went VIP. This is a great time for you to meet a bunch of attorneys and hear about what happens behind the scenes in this litigation. I'm excited about this for legal nurse consultants, life care planners, and others that are interested. This is a great time to get in. You still have time to register. And if you saw the show last week, we put the link out there, but I'll be happy to put the link again and for you if you're interested in going. I'm excited. I can't wait to be there for that. So those are all the things that we have coming up. And I'll be happy to talk with you again. All right. And I'll see you next time. And thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever we go live, and watch our other show, the Nurse Shark Academy show. Our new episode just dropped this past Monday. Looking excited for that. And also, don't forget to tune in every Wednesday for more nursing news. I love to share it with you. If you have an event in our local Anderson community that's coming up and you want me to promote your event, or you're in Indianapolis or somewhere in Indiana area, let me know and I'll be happy to promote your event as long as it's clean, fun, and family friendly. I'll be happy to promote your event. Other than that, I want to thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.